Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is Grad School Buddy, a show that gives simple answers to questions about grad school. I'm your host, Ikechukwu, a development economist and impact storyteller who has a master's from Georgetown University and a bachelor's from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. We hope this show helps you make better grad school decisions. Let's dive right in. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Grad School Buddy. So they said that if your podcast has not blown, once you introduce it, you should go straight to the point. So straight to the point. Today I am with Val. Val and I have been friends I just realized now that we've been friends for close to 2 decades. And I knew this young man before he took up a chieftaincy title. And here we are now. He's a chief. He's a tech bro. And he just graduated with a distinction. See, Val, how does it feel to be God's fave? So, hello, Val. Please say hello to the listeners. Tell them about you, what you do, how you found your way to our mic today.
It's a very long story. It's a long journey. We'll start from the beginning. So, my name is Valentine. I am a software engineer, like Ebele already said. And yes, we go back decades. Jesus. How did I find myself here? Excellent question. I remember when she started Grad School Buddy, and I think I was just about to start my MSc. So I'm like, this is interesting. I wish it's those kind of things you're like, oh yeah, this actually makes a lot of sense, because now I'm in the shoes of people who are trying to, or who are going to benefit from this thing and all. So, and I finished, we're just talking about school, every time we call to check in, we'll talk about school, talk about this, talk about that, life and all of that, episodes, recordings, every single thing. Fantastic stuff. One day, I was like, wow, this was actually, this was the first time I had this conversation was August last year. So it's been a long time coming, if not earlier, so yeah.
And listener, just so you know, this is March 2023. Because Van's like, I promise you, this Sunday we will record.
But.
I mean, half the time it was me, Sha.
Exactly. So we sharing blame evenly. So yeah, but I'm happy that this is happening today. And yeah, I hope it's fun. And I hope you enjoy it when you're listening to it.
Please, you cannot be campaigning. If they enjoy it, they enjoy it. If they don't enjoy it,
they have to enjoy it. They have to enjoy it.
So my first question for you is, can you tell us what you did when you went to, when you were in Nsukka, when we were both in Nsukka, what were you doing in Nsukka? And you also said that why are you laughing? You also said you're a software engineer, and you know that a lot of times, when we talk about the things that we do, because we do them every day, we think that everybody understands it. So can you tell us, if you were to explain to your 5-year-old niece or nephew what you do, what would that be?
Okay, so 2 questions. I'll start with the second one because it's the easiest to answer. Thankfully, this is 2023, where that's a very easy thing for a 5-year-old to understand. So, as a software engineer, a lot of what I do is what makes pretty much every single thing we do on the internet possible, right? Well, in different ways. Let's say you're using Facebook, or, when you're going to play this podcast, whatever it is you're using to listen to it, someone smarter than me someday sat down and designed it, right? That's typically what software engineers do. Essentially build software programs that make it possible to do different things on our devices, computers, phones, thermostats, even doors that are controlled by key cards, anything you could think of, every single thing that has some level of automation in it, a software engineer designed the system that runs it. Microwave, fan, TV remotes, TVs themselves, every single thing you can think of today that uses electricity to function. There's some work that a software engineer did to make that possible. Now, for my own field or my own specialty, I build applications that run over the internet. So you could use it on your phone, you could use it on your laptop. And yeah, that's my job. Now, if I was talking to a 5-year-old, it would be a lot easier because they would have a tablet somewhere that they play games on. And that game they're playing, someone like me designed it. Now, to the most interesting question.
Wait.
Yes.
Mr. Interesting. So before you tell us the most interesting question, can you tell us like what the most exciting thing you have worked on is? Like if you were to talk about what your most exciting project was for whatever reason, what would it be?
Ooh, what was my most exciting project? Okay. Everybody I've worked for, please forgive me, because what I'm about to mention is none of your projects. The most exciting thing I had built is it's a module that controls a mobile robot, right? Just a small robot to get it to move around, avoid obstacles and all. It's so nice because it's like you just have this little thing that runs around. You can feel it, you can touch it, you can experience it, right? I guess why it's so exciting for me is that I've done software for so long that it's second nature, but then integrating it into hardware that I actually use physically, there's some interesting, some excitement to it because you can see it. I built that, so yeah, that's what makes it the most exciting thing I'd worked on.
You also talk about it like it brought a lot of joy to you, but building it and seeing it come to fruition.
It did.
And okay, I can then send you back to Nsukka. When you were in Nsukka, did you know you'd be building stuff like this?
So, Nsukka, they can't take my degree back, right? Yes, because I spent most of my time in Nsukka trying to leave. Before I went to UNN, I had this idea of what my university education was going to look like. I'd spent a lot of time prepping to come to the UK to study until last minute. My mom was like, no child of hers is going abroad. You can't argue with an African parent when things like that happen. So that's how my dreams to go abroad died. But I already had a school I wanted to go to. I already made, I already started interacting with a curriculum. I already started taking some courses ahead of time. I was super excited about what was going to come. I'd seen some of their publications, some labs, some collaborations with the professors and students and all this. So this thing was the perfect place to be. Like, I can't blame anybody that went there at all costs, right? Because it was very enticing. So that was no longer happening, and then I had to find a school to go to. Then I just started researching where's the best school in Nigeria. At that time, it was UNN. So anyway, I decided to cut it out in UNN. I decided to see it through. I spent most of my time in UNN doing extracurriculars. I was learning how to build websites. I was learning how to build apps. I was just, learning different things while I was in UNN. All of these things were on YouTube. And then I got involved in a lot of things other than schooling. I still went to class, don't get me wrong. There were very interesting moments in school with people I met, with some of the courses that I did forced me to think about things outside of class. So that summarizes my 4 years. That sums up UNN.
Okay, so it's crazy because I feel like you just got very serious now. And Nsukka, you do this one, we're done. Like while you were talking, one thing I got was that you had a certain kind of exposure that is not common with a lot of people. And so I'm curious about what growing up was like for you. Where did you find your inspiration? Even before you got to Nsukka and you go to, all the places that had internet to find stuff. What was motivating you? What were you thinking when you were doing all of that?
I want to state here categorically that I had been spoiled at that time with internet access. Right? So my mom had this modem then that provided a lot of internet, and if you remember MTN's 3.75G modem, then I had pre-night browsing. Yeah, I went down so many rabbit holes with that thing. This was while I was in secondary school anyway. I wasn't sleeping, so I'd sleep in class, and then I'll spend all night awake in front of the computer till like 5, and then I'll sleep and come to school late. Some days I'll come early. But that was my routine. Because it was 11. First it was 11 to 5 a.m. Then it became 12 to 5 a.m. But that did not stop me either. So I had internet, and then during the day the internet works. Don't get me wrong. So I could use it during the day, but all the things like if I wanted to try out something, download it, I shadowed it for the night time. But during the day I could surf normally. There was enough data to do all of that. So I always had internet, and then I always had light at home. my house was a place where you were sure that you would have light for at least 20 out of 24 hours every day. Some days it was 24 hours, some days you'd go 3 days at a stretch, there was light. This is, including using generators or just having power supply. So, I was used to a certain lifestyle. And then I had my own laptop growing up. It was incredibly fast as well. And I could do so many things. So it allowed me to explore. I spent a lot of time on the internet exploring different things. I was still careful because okay, let me go back a little bit. So there's a time when I didn't have access to laptops or internet that I could use on a laptop. So it was all on my phone. So all I could do was read. So I spent a lot of time on my phone reading everything you could think of, right? First time I ever heard about quantum computers was in 2009, and I spent a great amount of time digging deep into quantum computers. We haven't still realized a realistically usable quantum computer as at today, 2023. So this is 15 years after. We're still trying to get to a usable quantum computer. But then it was still proof of concepts. It was still theory, like we're still theorizing what it could be like. I read a lot of things about things, physics with metals and all. So every single thing related to sciences and STEM, you'd find reading them. So I spent a lot of time reading about computers. I knew so much that I shouldn't know ordinarily without the internet, because there was no way that I was going to come in contact with that information. So I knew about different programming languages even before I ever wrote my first line of code. I knew about different companies that wrote software. I knew different things, different people. Like I knew people by name. I knew programs. I knew projects. I knew a lot of things. All, far back as 2008, 2009. So I already had this exposure to the internet for a very long time. And there were just so many things that I interacted with. There's just so much out there. There's like right now, there's way more out there right now. So many that we don't even interact with, but there was just so much out there. And it was like, how they describe these things where someone tells you something shocking and your head just explodes. That's how it felt like. It felt like someone was shining this bright light through my brain and I was getting so much illumination. So that was what was driving me. I felt like we had so much that we could reach for, so much that we could do. There was a higher calling, a higher purpose. There was something more out there. So yeah, that experience made it nearly impossible for me not to want more, right? Because for, let's say, 4 years before I got into UN, and I'd already had an experience and exposure to so much. But yeah, that was my experience.
Okay, now that explains a lot. I'm not going to tease you. I'll be a normal person. But for real, I feel like this is one thing that I always talk about, like with regards to exposure. And it's one of the things that we're trying to incorporate. We want kids to be able to talk to people who are doing amazing stuff, just so that they know that it's possible to actually do crazy stuff. Because I think that there is something that hope and imagination does to you, that when you're taken away from an environment, when you have that, it's just hard to dream. So that's why I will not tease you, is because your points are very valid. Okay, so when you started finding what your own role in the whole software engineering world was, and when you found your first job, like, can you tell us about what the transition was? And if it's not too much to ask, do you mind sharing with us what your first salary range was, if you feel comfortable? Okay. And the reason I'm asking is because I feel like a lot of times it's like people either... I was talking to my cousin, who I know when she listens to this, she'll probably cuss me out. I was talking to her and she was telling me about her salary expectations for her first job, straight out of undergrad.
How much was she expecting?
How much she was expecting? 500K. I'm like, my guy, I hate to be the one to tell
you.
But
where does she live?
She lives in Lagos, Nigeria.
Okay. That's all I'll say.
Wait, what did you say? I didn't hear you.
I said, okay.
But for real, so because I remember
it's not impossible.
I know it's not impossible, but I remember the first time that I got like an interview and they were going to pay me, whether it was 50K, and then they said, okay, maybe we will put it at whatever 65 or 75. I was like, these guys know I went to UNN. Like, did they see the whole Okune Bube that I'm coming with? And of course they didn't, because there was somebody else waiting to take it.
Yeah.
Like, real quick. So please tell us what your experience was, and if you can also share your own words of advice for people who are just leaving school, finding their way in the tech world.
Okay, so I finished school and I did something that I don't think many people would do or many people would consider smart. So remember I mentioned that I set up a company that I was using to build websites for people and digital marketing and all those kinds of stuff. So I finished school and then I wanted to continue building that project. But I was in Enugu then. And I did a quick check, and there weren't that many businesses I could offer the service to in Enugu, so I had to leave. I started thinking about other things that I could do to. Now I found there was a real problem. Like, Enugu is a great place, it's very safe, it's very clean. This was still under Sullivan Chime. And, we had really great power supply. The town was, it was an amazing place to live, to be honest. So I felt we should ordinarily have lots of businesses here. Right, people should build businesses in Enugu because it's a great place to be, and it's very affordable. Did I mention that? Yes. So that created a desire to do something about it. So I went out to set up a co-working space. Managed to convince someone that had a big space to let us set up, let's set up a co-working space there, and we did. And it didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out. It didn't grow as fast as it should have to sustain the business, but it was a very good thing. I think the next year after that, someone else had set up another one, and I know maybe a few more people set up afterwards as well. But that's all fantastic stuff. Would I set up a co-working space today? I'll do it very differently. So I think I've been contemplating it recently, to set up another one. This time it wouldn't be a co-working space. It's going to be more like a lab, and it's going to be dedicated primarily to STEM, right? So science, technology, engineering, math. All of this would happen in Enugu. But I haven't been to Enugu in a very long time, so I don't know if Enugu still has the environment to support it, right? But yeah, like if I was in Enugu today, it's something I'm going to seriously consider doing. My targets would be very young people. So they have some...
I'm smiling because you told me about this like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And if you don't do this in the next 5 years, the same Four Corner Junction that I tell you about every 2 business days. I was about to ask you, didn't you say you were going to target secondary school like age?
Yeah, I always think about different things that I could do when I'm in Enugu for them. So what I added to that list of things is going to be a small shop for robotic experiments. So I've been trying to solve the problem of getting the hardware that is needed to make things happen, chips and all of that, because we don't produce them in Nigeria, and then we don't import a lot of them. We don't produce computer hardware in Nigeria, so you won't readily have those chips available. So I've just been thinking about, so assuming I decide to run this in Enugu, how would that work out? But it's all going to be most likely not for profit, or at least the part that involves young people. But yeah, that's an aside. Anyway, then I did the co-working space in 2017. It wasn't working out, so eventually it had to shut down. And I went to Lagos, and that started another chapter of my life. I remember saying when I was going to Lagos that I was going to spend 4 years in Lagos and I was going to leave the country. And exactly 1 week, 4 years and 1 week, I was on a plane to the UK to do my master's. I think about it a whole lot. I'm like, be careful what you say. But yeah.
Wait, now I have 1 million questions for you, but I don't want you to forget the throwback ones. The ones about the salary, the expectation,
yes,
what they
yes,
should
yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Lagos, and then we did another project in Lagos as well. Got some funding for it, and we had a long way to go. So we decided to take the smallest amount of money. I was in my NYSC now at the same time, yeah? So I had to take the smallest amount of money possible so that we could stretch out our runway and do what we needed to do. This was the time investors would give $5K, $25,000, and then they would take like 5% of your company. And it's not like now that everywhere is flush with capital. So what did we do? We started building, and then I started out 20K, then went up to 30K. So it was 30K for a very long time. All right. Just some background so everybody understands. When I was moving to Lagos in 2017, I wasn't moving to Lagos, just to find my feet. I was moving to Lagos with some solid support, right? I have family in Lagos, so if push came to shove, I had somewhere I was going to run to. But I also had enough money in my bank account that I was going to, that's why I came in, I went straight to rent an apartment in Yaba. Like I wanted to live in Yaba, which around that time we were shouting Yabacon Valley. So I wanted to live in Yaba to be very close to everything that was happening.
See, can we just agree that you tech bros are very corny? What is Yabacon Valley? You guys are so annoying.
I was not there when they coined the term, but I actually believed in creating that community, a very solid community of tech people, and it happened in Yaba sort of. That eventually didn't happen anymore, and it became scattered across the whole of Lagos. I think right now it's happening in Lekki, but it's still very scattered. Like tech bros somehow haven't come together to live in close proximity. Maybe they have now, I don't know, but I've been away for quite a while. So back to the story. I came in, rented an apartment, and just got a few stuff to get started, and I went about my life, right? Now, I made sure I still had some money in my account to fall back on, so there was some comfort in it. Even if we tell you I could use CBK, right? So there was some comfort in it. I could do what I was doing then without thinking about anything, really. I mean, I was young. I was very inexperienced. So it's not like I was losing out on anything, So yeah, we just kept on doing what we were doing. It was 20K for like 2 months. And then Lagos got more expensive. So we had to raise it to 30K for a few more months before we got to a point where we could no longer continue the project, and then we all had to find other things that we were going to do. So I had to find a way to make that 20K work for me every month, and eventually 30K. Because when the 30K came, it was pretty much the same as the 20K because the cost of living had gone up in Lagos. And yeah, that was my experience. So came to Lagos, started out with 20K, then 30K, and then the next one was 65K. And it just kept on going up from there. So I know that over the last few years that a lot of focus have been on the amount of money you could make in tech, rather than the actual impact that you could have and whatnot. All right. So that in itself is somewhat problematic. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the money is not good, but I'm saying that you're better off focusing on learning the craft and learning really well, and then getting the money after, right? Because if you don't learn the craft, you could get opportunities right now, you could grift your way through it, but at some point you'd get into trouble, except you're excellent at selling. So you'd always find a way to sell yourself and get it somewhere, but you just keep latching onto places and keep going like that until one day you can't anymore. Yeah? But just focus on the craft, and if you could find a really good place where you'd learn a whole lot, yes, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't pay you or you shouldn't be paid, but it just means that if you're offered a decent enough amount of money, right, I mean, take the job, right? Take the job and learn as much as you can learn, and just focus on doing a really good work, learn quite a whole lot, and you just keep stepping from there. So that's what I would say. And as for a cousin that is expecting 500K when she comes out, I don't know the realities in Lagos right now, I'll be very honest. But I also know that there's a lot of cash crunch, and then people who could pay that much money are tech companies. And we're in a tech winter right now. So that might not be possible. So it doesn't mean she shouldn't aim high. She should. I absolutely, support that. But at the same time, she should be very certain what matters the most to her. Right? It's not. It's how people tell you that money doesn't bring happiness, and it's not all about the money. There's some element of truth to it. The money is great, I can assure you. Like, if you have money, you'd be very happy as a person. But after a while, it becomes, on the economic curve, you reach the diminished point of diminishing return, and then everything else after that just makes you sadder. So, yeah, that's my advice. Focus on the craft more than the money. The money would come eventually. There's no truth about it. Every single person I know that got into the tech field years ago, they are all doing incredibly well. All the people that was earning 20k, 30k, that well just bent our head down and we were doing this thing for the love of it. But they started around Europe and they're doing incredibly well. All right. So, yeah.
To focus on your craft, don't be drawn into the money.
Exactly.
Put your head down, and in a few years, hopefully, it all comes together.
Certainly, it's not like it's a numbers game. The more time you spend getting better at this thing, the better you are at it, the more money you're going to make. That's the secret. Yeah.
Like at a point where you had gone from making 20k to finding your way to realizing, okay, this is what I want to do. You started earning more. Why did you decide to put a pause on all of that to go to grad school? Especially since, from where I am standing as a layman in the tech world, it seems as though you learn more by putting things into practice. So what was it that made you decide, hey, I want to take a pause, I want to go back to school? And how did you get to that process? How did you choose the country, the school? Like, just tell us about your whole process towards deciding, I don't go grad school. Okay, waiting concern tech bro with grad school.
So there are a number of factors that come into play here. I'll start with one factor. Like, I like learning. From my story, I like learning, and as a matter of fact, I've been contemplating whether I should do a second master's or do a PhD. It's something I've been playing with for a while. So that's just tell you, that it's something that I really want to do. Right. The other thing was I hadn't decided on the time or where. I knew I wanted to do the degree. Right. I was looking at different paths. Either I'm going to do something in finance or I was going to do something in tech. Right. Finance, I had very strong interest in finance. I had a diploma in accounting after I finished school anyway, not while I was in school. So I was thinking, should I finish that up? Just take that all the way and then get a BSc and MSc in accounting, or should I just go ahead and do something in tech? So it was just a matter of what path and when. Right? When would be when do I have enough money to do it? When did we experienced COVID in 2020? So I just predicted a lot of things were just going to happen, and all of them happened quickly. The country just kept on going whatever direction that it was going in. Things just kept on taking a nosedive. I was thinking about just going to do my program and I just continue working. But I was now deciding on when to go. When is the right time to go? When is the right time to go? So I made the applications in 2020. I think just before I sold the project I was working on with my friend to Reliance. But then I never got any feedback because we're in the middle of COVID. So feedback would come sometime in September. They were trying to rush through the program. I just push it to January 1st. Let's see what happens. So I'll just have enough time to actually do what I'm doing here. It's somehow that I just move over to join the project. And then I'm like, oh, guys, I'm moving to the UK. Let's continue when I get to the UK. So I wanted to make sure that I had integrated enough and I had done everything that had to be done before I left. And that's what I did. So they pushed it to the next year, which was 2021. And yeah, I went. Now, I've talked about a number of factors already. There's one factor that I cannot fail to mention here. It's
I was muted, but I started laughing as soon as you said that.
Everything happened in country is just too much. And here's the fun thing. I didn't remember that I said in 2017 that I'll spend 4 years in Lagos if I leave. I didn't remember. I wasn't thinking about it and I wasn't trying to meet that timeline. That's the funny thing. January came, finally I got admission and, the rest is history. I didn't go immediately. I left in June. That's how I made that decision. So it was a mix of things. One, I wanted to go. Secondly, I was beginning to feel suffocated in Lagos. And I think that if I had any doubts about leaving, all of that got destroyed on October 20th of 2020. Yeah, I can never forget that day.
I think that it broke something in a lot of people. Myself
Certainly in
included.
me,
I'm like, yeah, myself included. These days I'm just always tired. Everybody asks me, how are you doing? I say, I'm tired.
To see everything else that happened after that, how callous. Anyway, that's not the focus of this podcast, please.
I know. Let me try Amigos back to track.
Yes.
So how did you find the school? Like when you like you said you applied yourself. A lot of people when they think about applying themselves for grad school, they freak out because they think, oh, this is so hard. Where do I even begin? So how did you find the school? Even before then, when you started going through the application process by yourself, what made you think, hey, this is something I can do myself? And what did you do?
I did not know people did not do it themselves. That's the truth. Dig it. Like the same way that when I was applying for UN and I applied myself, I later found out that people actually have people make those applications, or at least consult people for that. And I thought, I was the university, they have apply button, you click, you apply, you submit form, answer their questions, and you're good. That was how I made that application. So it was later during the course of the application, people were asking me, agents, which agents? Even when it came to the visa application, agents, which agents? Like I'd done it myself. And then for the school, I have a brother that was living in Leicester at that time. So he just told me about the school. And I'm like, oh, okay. I went online, I looked at that program. I saw Intelligence Systems and Robotics. I'm like, this fits very nicely into what I'm interested in. And then I just clicked the button to apply. And I applied and they came back. So they would have you write personal statement and a number of other stuff. So I just wrote my personal statement. I wrote everything. It was fine. Like I didn't think too much about. Like I didn't know. This is not how people do it. I just felt like this is what every other person was doing. Right? I just went ahead and I did it like that. And the rest is history.
First of all, I definitely agree that people should apply themselves. I myself didn't use an agent. I knew that people were paying agents, but as a true person that grew up in Enugu, I was like, I'm my own agent too. But all this shall I to say, dear listener, please, you know that you can apply by yourself. Just read the FAQs. If Val did it and Ibele did it.
You definitely can.
You definitely can. Joe, what have you enjoyed most about living in Europe? And for people who are looking to relocate, what would you tell them? What has the experience been for you? And what would you tell them, like tech bros who are already used to, especially the lifestyle of being a tech bro, then switching to become students? What would you tell them?
So all those clubbing and all those partying I didn't do while I was in ULM. I did all of it here. And it's so easy. It's so stress-free. Oh my God. Like this is almost midnight right now. If I take my device outside right now and we're having this call, you're going to hear, people not very far from my house. You're going to hear people clubbing. So it's so easy to club here.
Please take us with you.
It's so easy to club, it's so easy to party, it's so easy to have a good time and go out and drinks, food, whatever you want to dance, anything. And then there are different flavors and varieties. So whatever genre of music that interests you, you find a place where you could actually enjoy it. Right? So I had a very great time, and I like the fact that it was very safe. I'm leaving the school library like around 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and I'm walking home most nights because I enjoy the works. It allows me to internalize what I learned in the library, because once I get back to the house, just drop every single thing and then start prepping to sleep. But I walk, it's like all the things I've spent time, I cannot think about them more and all. And it was so easy, so quiet, so stress-free. Oh my God, I can't even start. Like I don't even know, I can't express completely how much of a different experience it was, but it was a very good experience. I highly recommend it for everybody. So yeah.
I like the way you said you highly recommend it, and this brings me to a very important question. Please tell us about the finances. Like, as you're making recommendations, my guy, what should people expect as they're going on this journey? How much, what was the journey for you? Were you self-sponsored? And again, you don't need to say direct amounts. You could say, for instance, it was like the goodwill of the people around? Like, were you intentionally looking for scholarships, or had you been planning for a long time such that you had saved some money and you could also rely on the people around you to make it work?
So, interesting stuff. Before making that trip, like I had enough money to pay for my program, pay for my accommodation, pay for my living, if I wanted to do 2 programs even. Remember how I started the story with focus on the craft, the money would come. So by the time I started working, I think in 2018, I started working with a US-based company. So I had more than enough money that I could save quite a lot to, afford to sponsor myself all the way to the UK. Before leaving Nigeria, I've already paid my entire school fees, right? And then I already paid for my accommodation. Like I already sent the money that was going to last me for like the entire school year. So I was landing in the UK and then I was just going to go straight to class. I didn't have to worry about anything. And I also had enough money to run me all through the program, and anything. So all these things I mentioned, going out, partying, all those things, I had enough money to cover all of that. Now that's my experience, right? For other people, it might not be their experience. So people come here and then they get jobs and then they make it through the whole thing. I know a lot of people that it was their own experience. They got here, they took up some jobs here in the UK, and then they paid off the balance of their fees and their upkeep, their accommodation, all of that. It's very doable. Like I know so many people that have done it already, so it's very, very doable. Okay, so for the money, it's getting more expensive right now to come to the UK. When I was coming to the UK, I paid £12,600 to come to the UK, right? If you want to come to the UK right now to do my program, you're going to spend somewhere close to 16,500 or 17,000. That's how much of a jump it's experienced over the last few years. And I think it's the same. You can still find schools that are under £15,000 in the UK. Don't get me wrong, they still exist. But it's just to set your expectations correctly. For accommodation, so the accommodation I stayed in when I came to the UK goes for about £500 something in a month now. But when I came to the UK, I paid £440. By the time I was living in the accommodation, they had raised the rent to somewhere around £500 something. So most accommodation you get to be between £400 to £500, £600, depending on what you're interested in having. So that means you could get an accommodation that is suitable for you as a student to do what you need to do. And then for upkeep, yeah, this part is interesting. So you could do very fine on less than £100 a month. This is with the current cost of living. Last year, you could probably do the same thing with somewhere around, say, £50-60. Well, just to create a buffer because egg is expensive now. So that sort of sums up everything, right? The costs, I self-sponsored my program. Yeah. Did I miss any question? No.
I like the way you asked and you answered, but actually, no, you didn't. This is one of the reasons why I really love this podcast, because I think at this point, like, we've had someone who took a loan. We've had people who it was, like a mix of I took a loan and I had savings. We've had people who were like, hey, it was full scholarship for me. And, you sharing this perspective of I saved this money is also really, really useful, because I know there might be people who they have finally saved the amount that it costs to go to grad school. Yeah. But they are wondering, is it even worth it? Like, would you say this investment is something that I should drop like 12K, like 25K, 50K for? Would you say that you appreciate or that you're reaping the benefit of the investment that you've had? And what would you say to someone who is considering it?
Okay, so here's what I would say. I will reap the benefits of my program when I'm ready. But if I want to today, I can. And why am I saying it this way? Before I came to the UK, I was already a very experienced software engineer. So that means that I had a career that was going to work out excellently for me with or without coming to the UK, right? I could move almost anywhere in the world at that point in time. Before I even left for the UK, I had an offer to move to Germany, which I declined. And if I wanted to, and if I applied seriously, I could have moved elsewhere in Europe. I could have even moved to the UK to work in the UK, right, with my experience level. And if I wanted to go to the US, I would have probably done the same as well. If it was Canada, anyway, really, to be honest. So that's just to share some perspective, right? So the decision to come to study was one that I made knowing fully well that I really wanted to study, and it was a personal decision. I wanted to do this thing for myself. Now the other part is that it puts me in a very unique position. Now, if I want to use my degree tomorrow, I can. It's there. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be a good representation of what I represent as a person. And for most things that I'm doing right now, I really don't need to use it. Right? Nobody ever asked me what I studied or where I studied or how it was, or nobody. Because for someone who wants to, or for someone who is considering if this is going to be useful, absolutely, 100%. Yes, it's always going to be very valuable, but at the end of the day, it's something you'd have to think really hard about and make that decision. So, yeah.
So first of all, you've talked a lot about skills, and I know that obviously skills differ according to the profession and where the person is working.
Yeah.
But what would you say would be like the things that have set you apart as a software engineer in the last few roles that you have had, such that even now that you're playing on a global scale, you are still able to compete with software engineers around the world?
It's hard to say, but one thing I can say is that everywhere you go to, they value experience. So if you're experienced and if you can demonstrate that you understand how to solve problems and you've managed to solve them, you're always going to get an opportunity. All right. And then the more problems you solve, the better the opportunities you get, so I'm not going to say, there wasn't anything that set me apart, but I think that it sort of leveled the field. I think that's the best way to describe it. And then for me to come all the way from soccer and then come to the Western world, where I'm competing with Westerners, it just sort of levels that playing field, right? So if you're experienced as an engineer, experienced in your field, it just levels the playing field. Like, people are interested in the people who can solve problems, and if you can solve problems, you're always going to have a seat.
Okay, people. So put on your problem-solving hats as you get experiences. Make sure they are things that put you in a place where you understand what the solutions to implement are. Okay. Okay, so I know that there are things you do that are outside your tech bro world. Like, you don't spend your whole time kind of building software that makes robots work. What do you do outside of work? How do you relax? It can also be something fun. You can tell us about it.
It has to be something fun, right? Someone who don't listen to this podcast and wonder, this guy's
okay, so the first thing is that every time I see you on Instagram, if you're not on a boat cruise, you and your friends are doing tumbom for whose card they used to play. You guys need to put me in there, but without my card. So I know that you know how to have fun. So tell us about Val outside the tech world. What is your what's your other 9 to 5? What's your maybe 6 to 8?
So I think last year I did a lot of clubbing, right? My God. I was outside a lot. Always outside. Wow. And then I did a lot of traveling as well. I clubbed in Germany, and I clubbed in Munich, in Lisbon. Did I do it in Hamburg? No, I didn't. And then of course in Montenegro, the UK here. So that's all of last year, right? The year before, everything was local in the UK. So that is after a very long week, get a lot of alcohol in your system and just wind down. Some people, that's not their own poison, but that's my own. When I'm not doing that, I have found this attraction to Netflix series. Well, not Netflix actually, but some Netflix series, some Amazon Prime series as well. there's just this joy of just sitting down and not doing anything and just watching movies, right? But what the other part which I can't forget is gaming. So, Ibi, I'm about to play a sound right now that you're going to hear, right? And I am very certain you're going to relate to it. If you don't relate to it, I'll explain. Which one am I going to play?
Is that Super Mario?
Yes.
Can you share your screen, please? I can hear it. Oh my god. You guys, you people don't give us enough on this podcast for the joy we bring to you. How do you have Super Mario? How do you have Super Mario?
So I set up Super Mario, right?
How? Oh my god. So God, this is what others are enjoying. As if you're trying to make me your strongest soldier again this year.
So how do I have Super Mario? Yes. So I have been planning to get it since. I went to Cardiff, right? And then I entered an arcade, and then I saw them set up, the games on these tiny devices. So some they had the actual had the Senegal Genesis boxes. Some others they had the Nintendo boxes and all, and then some different things. So I went online and I tried to get the Sega Genesis. It was too expensive, and then I was thinking, could I build?
How much was it a big?
I think I saw some. It was like maybe 100 and something. No, I think it was more than 100 and something pounds. Because if it was less than 100 and something pounds, I'd have bought it. I think it was somewhere around 200 and something pounds. I'm like, yeah, this is so expensive.
Yeah.
So I decided to build it myself. Right?
Oh my god. Well, I don't like you right now. You're like, ha ha ha.
Why?
We can play the game. Anybody can play the game. Okay, cool. How did you get the game? I built it myself. How am I supposed to build it myself?
Slow down. I was going to build it on a Raspberry Pi, but then if you know how expensive and how scarce Raspberry Pis are in the market right now, I had to improvise. So I eventually just found an emulator that was going to run it on my computer, and I ran the emulator.
Oh my god.
All right.
Okay, so my final question for you is, what would be your random advice to people just in general? And if you could advise younger you, what would you tell yourself?
Every time people ask for these kinds of things, where they say, what do you think? Or you should advise the younger generation, all this. I always find it very amusing because there's really never a correct thing to say, especially in a world like ours right now. But I know at least one thing I can say, which is the fact that every person who is, especially if you're young, just spend a lot of your time trying to learn as much as you can learn, especially in the field of STEM, because it's going to be largely what we would have in the future, right? It's going to be the most valuable skill you'd have. And then, of course, the arts and humanities, those two areas. Most other things will likely be replaced by AI and robots. But if you're replacing things with AI and robots, you'd want to have the skill to either use or build, those systems. I was thinking about it today. I'm like, in my age, my generation, we experienced internet, we experienced information age, we experienced mind-blowing technology. Like I saw all of these things. I went from where internet was the scarce resource to where it's something everybody has access to right now, almost everywhere in the world. Well, at least half of the world has access to internet, right? And then the future that will exist in the next 5 to 10 years will probably have everybody in the world connected to the internet one way or the other. And you'd have almost everything on the internet run by artificial intelligence. And that's a bit scary, if I'm being honest, but it's also exciting. It would be, none of us were alive to see the time when, the time before computers. We don't know what it's like. I'm not even sure our parents could remember what it's like, right? But it's going to be it's going to be that kind of thing where you can't even remember what it's like to live without it. right? We had periods where we never had access to internet. I think a lot of us had access to internet when we got into university or towards the tail end of our secondary school. But now you can't imagine not having internet. Like if your phone is disconnected, it's like you're choking because it's not like you need it for anything, but it has to be there. Why is it not there? Right. So I feel it's the same way with AI. Like it's going to make so many things easier, but it's going to create a lot of opportunities. And then the people who would be most valuable are people who have critical knowledge. Like you have knowledge you could apply to solve problems. So younger me, likes a lot of the stuff that I do right now. If I was going to talk to younger me, I'll tell younger me to even focus and do more than I did when I was a lot younger. I'm doing a whole lot of stuff right now, and I'm trying to do even more now. But there's so much more I could have done. I feel like I wasted a lot of time as well. There's so much more I could have done, but I just didn't know. So yeah, like right now, I'm trying to fix so many things that I missed. Let me explain it this way. Technology was my 9 to 5. I just spent a lot of time after my 9 to 5 doing things that were not in STEM. Some were fun, which is perfectly fine. Some were not necessarily fun, just time wasted. So if I spend more of that time focused on technology, I think I'll probably have done way more than I have at this particular point in time, right? And yeah, like we have the AI revolution right now, and I'm not leading it. I'm not on the front lines. I'm not even on the bench. I'm an observer that is watching outside the stadium as the world is changing rapidly, right? And then it's people like me who are doing all of that. So they're not older, basically my age mates and people within my age group are actually building the systems that are changing the world. So sometime in the future,
just so you know, to all of us that grew up in Enugu together, you're doing some amazing stuff. Like I'm telling you, I look at all my friends from Wichita and I laugh because I'm like, we're actually doing serious stuff, and I'm so proud of the work you do. I think that it's very. Sometimes we look at our lives and we think like, oh, if I had optimized through X, Y, Z, I could have done X, Y, Z. Yes. But I'll always be here to remind you that you're doing amazing and give yourself your roses. You nonsense.
That is true. 100%. 100%. Right? Like I never forget. I try never to forget that. All right, but
I think that the more the more you realize what's possible, the more you realize, oh crap, I can actually do more. And I think that's what like also happens. You realize, because sometimes I think to myself, what was I doing with half my time in Osaka? I did a lot, but I'm just like,
Exactly. And around that time, it was a whole lot, right? Like it was tangible. You could see it. People looked up to you people looked up to me while I was in Osaka. I'm looking down at myself.
I'm like, I beg.
I'm looking at and I realize how much I didn't know. And that's the crazy thing. So the more I know, the more I realize how much there is to know. And the more I'm like, oh my God, there's so much more. And then some days I stop and I look at how much I know. And I'm like, okay, we're like 10 times farther than where we were last year. But it's like you're now 100 times away from where you thought you were going to be, because now there's so much more. So it's like you're going into the deep end and it just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. That's life. But, and most important part is just to have fun with the whole thing as well. Right.
Okay. I want to ask, for the people who have enjoyed this podcast, this episode, and people who want to reach out to you, where can they find you? It could be your LinkedIn. It could be your website. It could be your digital. Just tell us, where should we go?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Let me tell you guys what Val says every 3 months. Ebele, I've deleted Twitter, Instagram, Gmail.
That's why I said that's interesting, because I don't know how to tell someone to find me tomorrow. So that's the problem. Then, okay, I can say Twitter, because I still try to keep up with what's happening with the rest of the world. So, yes, you could find me on Twitter. That's the best place to find me. Yes, Twitter at Chief Oleka.
Okay, I was going to tell you, do you want to tell them your art? I believe they go on Twitter, they blow air 2 times. And see Val.
Just do it, and if you do it 2 times, I'll show up.
Okay, guys. So remember, if you want to find Val on Twitter, you can find him at Chief Oleka, which is spelled ChiefOleka.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say thank you so much, Val, for spending this time with us today and for sharing, your journey from going from traditional tech bro to school, finding your way back to traditional tech bro again, or untraditional. Actually, there's nothing traditional about Val. That's one thing.
There's not traditional about tech.
It's been so amazing spending this time with you.
Thank
it has
you.
ended though. That's it. That's how it doesn't.
Thanks, and God bless.
Dear listener, it's so bold of you to think that I would have forgotten to thank you specially for listening to this point. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey with us. If you have enjoyed the story, you already know what to do. And don't forget, in this house, we do not gatekeep. Please share. Have a beautiful week and see you next season.